welcome to Quilting Business Success. That's actually the best intro I've ever done. It was only one sentence.
I was really impressed. Usually I just settle down for a 20-minute monologue here when Andrew is talking. Anyway, with that being said, I will introduce ourselves. I am Bob in tech support, and most of you know Andrew.
Mhm.
And on today's podcast, we have with us Andi Stanfield and Beth Lonnquist. Did I pronounce both of those correctly? Good deal. And we have not yet decided which one will go first, but we will spend about half of the program with each of them. And I just want to tell you, ladies, when we are interviewing the other one, if you feel like you have something that you want to contribute, feel free to speak right up. We're casual here. You can chime in on the other's interview also.
Well, with that, let's get started. I will say one little preliminary thing, which is that if you come in halfway through, or if you have listened to this episode and you want to go find all the other ones, they do live on YouTube with video if you look for Quilting Business Success. Or if you know how podcasts work and you can go to the Apple Podcast app on your phone, or you can use the Spotify app on any platform. I got an email saying that Google Podcasts is going away. I'm sure they're going to replace it with something. Google likes to change things as soon as everybody starts using it. And so in
Also,
all of those,
during the program, if anybody would like to, if any of the viewers would during this live broadcast would like to submit a question or ask something, it will show up on our screen, and we can ask that question for you.
yeah, there's a Q&A at the bottom of the screen, and you just click there and type in your question. And if you do need to specify who you're addressing the question to, go ahead and do that. Okay, well, let's get started. For no particular reason, I felt like starting with Andi because her name is closest to mine. And so let's just,
Okay.
Keep it alphabetical.
I don't have a coin to flip. I could roll a dollar bill, I guess, and see which side it comes up top. But where's home for you, Andi?
I am joining you tonight from usually sunny Phoenix, Arizona, but today we've had solid rain. But most of the time, I really enjoy the sunny temperatures here in the desert.
Awesome. Well, it's good to get that rain out of the year, so you don't out of the way, so you don't need any more for the year.
Well, we are in a drought, so we'll take a few days of rain, but just a few.
Gotcha.
Take what you can get. So, Andi, how long have you been long arming?
I got a long arm just 2 years after I started quilting, and that was back in 2006. So about 17, 18 years now. It's been a wonderful journey.
Mm-hmm. So what made you decide to long arm? You said you'd been quilting for a couple years,
Mm-hmm.
cutting fabric apart and putting it back together.
Yep, all that crazy, wonderful stuff. You dive in and just fall in love with it. And I at every stage of the quilting process, I'm thinking of what comes next. So it was hard for me to start having ideas about how I wanted the finished quilt to look and then give it to someone else to finish. And I had tried quilting on my domestic machine, and I can remember the exact quilt that I was working on, trying to do a kind of a big meander wavy pattern, and I couldn't see enough of the quilt. I wanted that big vision to just be able to move across the whole quilt, and that was the turning point. And I started researching long arm machines, and my husband was very supportive, and yeah, I found the Gamble family and continued my journey from there.
And so when you first started, you were going for it with the intention of doing it as a business more so than personal, or?
Um, I was kind of open to anything. Again, my husband was really supportive. He said, you know, if all you ever do is quilt your own quilts, that's fine. But I had some wonderful mentors in my local quilt group that also used Gamble machines. So that was a big deciding factor on what brand to purchase because I had those resources available to answer my questions and to learn from. And yeah, they were quilting for a lot of people, and it encouraged me that there was that possibility out there. So pretty early on, I started working on customer quilts.
Hmm. So when you started the shopping process, obviously you had your friends that already had gamels and they're twisting your arm in certain directions. But when it came time for you to make the decision, and maybe your husband had input on this, why did you decide to pick the gamel?
I had gone to some of the bigger shows where Gamble and some of the other manufacturers had booths, so I was able to try them out. And um, we had a relatively convenient local dealer, Gamble dealer. So having that solid support from a shop with service technicians available, and as I said, the support system of having good friends that also had the Gamble um, machine, it was a pretty easy decision to stick with that. I didn't really ever consider another option. So in
Hmm.
the intervening years, I've had, you know, classes, everybody uh, tries out different machines, and I always come back to my Gamble. It's consistent, it's easy to use. I love it.
And when you first started out, what model of machine did you start out with?
Um, Back in 2006, the Statler was, I think, just coming on the scene and becoming a viable option, but it was still a little bit out of my price range. So I stuck with the Gamble Classic Plus, and I think it's the 26-inch throat. So I've got a good size machine with a 12-foot table.
Is it the same machine today, or has it had upgrades and
Yeah, it has been a workhorse for all of these years. I had to have the motherboard replaced finally in the 16th year. So
Mhm,
it is the same machine.
mhm.
We'll see one of these days if I can put some more bells and whistles on it, but it's working just fine. And I have found that with just in the Phoenix area, there's, you know, it's a metropolitan area. There's a lot of quilt shops, there's a lot of quilters, there's a lot of long armors, and most of them are doing edge to edge computerized designs. So me having my experience as a hand guided quilter who is willing to do custom work, I really have kind of that niche that I can offer different services than everyone else.
Mhm. I'll add to that kind of something that I've noticed over the years, and especially as I speak with different people who have all built different businesses, right? No two long arm quilting businesses are the same, but it seems as though it's very, very obvious that that your clientele reflects your work, meaning that I guess if you were running a restaurant and it was a restaurant that did wonderful Italian food, over time, the people who are your regulars who come in all the time would be people who like Italian food, right? And if they don't like Italian food, they're eating somewhere else. And so, in the same way, when you start doing a particular type of service in the long arm quilting, what ends up happening is the customers that like that, they are going to be your regulars, you know.
Yeah.
And I've
And
had people say, well, nobody even asks for custom. Well, yeah, because you don't offer it. They're
right.
going to
And
somebody who does.
yeah, and the quilt shops that make referrals, they obviously know the different quilters and their different levels of expertise. In the same way, as the quilt world has wonderful variety, there's lots of wonderful applique people. I will not do personally sew an applique quilt. I'm much more of a traditional piecer, but there's room for everyone. So that's what I love about this quilting industry.
There are so many quilts to be done. Yeah.
And when you first started, Andy, I know there's a lot of people that are watching this podcast or listening to it that would be interested in knowing when you first started, did you kind of have a feeling or a know that there were enough customers out there? Tell us a little bit about the beginning journey of finding business.
I would say that yes, there are plenty of quilters out there for anyone who wants to do this as a business. Even in the guild chapter that I was a member of at the time, and I said I had a couple friends, there were 4 or 5 of us in one group, and we all had plenty of business. So I really have never heard of a long armor struggling to find customers, as long as you're making the effort, talking to the people in the quilt shops, talking to people in guilds, putting your name out there, trying to ask customers to share their experience with your work. That word of mouth is going to be the solid gold method.
Mhm. So those are the ways that you found customers, right? Because that was my next question. How did you find customers? So that was going to the quilt shops,
Mm-hmm.
having conversations with people there so that they knew what your phone number was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
a lot of the shops that I've been in will have a little counter. It might be by the cash register or by the notions wall or something with multiple long arm services and different sewing services, people's business cards. So
Mhm.
just kind of that bulletin board effect
Right.
of putting your name out there. So um, and different groups allow you to advertise on their website. So as a member of the guild, I can pay an additional fee to put my name on their website. So then anybody that's looking there can find a quilter in the local area.
Mhm.
And how did you come up with the funds to buy your first machine?
I we had some family savings, and through discussion, we family discussion, is this in the budget, can we swing this, and um, I was able to fund that through that kind of nest egg a little bit. But I am very much on the young demographic side of the age range of quilters, so I was still working full-time when I bought my machine. I'm still working full-time now, so it's definitely a supplemental income source for me, and it was funded through those personal
You're
budget.
still working full time aside from your quilting business, your podcasting business, and everything else.
Yeah,
You're a
if you need
busy
something
woman.
done, ask a busy person. I'll squeeze it in.
That's true. That's very true.
Wow.
Um, so about how many hours per week would you say you spend doing the quilting for other people? I mean, obviously your own quilting too, but
Yeah.
how much doing customer quilts in a week or maybe a month is easier, I don't know.
I probably spend maybe 5 to 10 hours a week on customer quilts. I usually tell people that I have about a 2 to 3 week turnaround because I am working this nights and weekends, and I have a family. They like to see me sometimes, so I can't devote all weekend every weekend to quilting as much as I'd love to. Um, but so I try to manage my projects so that I'm doing only 1 to 2 customer quilts a month. So I'm not as prolific um, as I could be. But again, as I said, I'm on the younger side of the demographics. I still have my full retirement years to look forward to quilting more.
Sure. That sounds good. So, custom quilting is mostly what you're doing, it sounds like. And how do you structure your rates? I mean, on an edge to edge basis, it's very common to just be so many cents per inch.
Mhm.
But with custom, how do you even do the rates or quote people?
I actually am very similar because I started out and I do offer pantograph edge to edge as a lower cost option. So I kind of have three tiers. I have that basic um, edge to edge. If I were going to do just even freehand, one basic filler, one color of thread, I'd put that at the pantograph rate. And then I have kind of a mid tier price point that is totally custom, but only maybe two or three thread colors. If you had a color in the block with its contrast. So let's say you had a sampler quilt that was blue and white. You do something in the blue section, something else in the white, and maybe a different color if there was one in the border. And that would be the mid tier. And then the highest rate is the full on match every single color in the quilt. And, you may have 6 or 8 color changes.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
If you had to, if somebody's watching this wanting to, because a lot of the people that are watching this program are trying to determine how to do their own pricing scheme and everything. Based on those three tiers that you just shared, could you give like a ballpark of what like a queen size quilt would cost?
Yeah, I looked at the at some numbers, and a queen size quilt for the would probably be at the lowest tier would be about $200, and then up to 300 or a little more for the highest tier, but probably around 250, 260 for a queen size quilt is a good estimate, since I do go off the exact measurements, and everybody's definition of a queen size is a little different.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, when people are trying to figure out, can I afford to get a machine and maybe can I make the payment off of what I do for quilting? Keeping in mind you're only doing 5 to 10 hours a week of work with the
Mhm.
machine. But revenue wise, what does a bad year look like and what does a good year look like?
Um, I have kind of calculated when I work on a quilt that I'm going to be somewhere in the $30 to $40 an hour range uh, for my services. So as long as I can, feel good about that, I'm thinking that's pretty good.
Mhm.
Again, it part-time for me. So if I am making um, you know, $400 a month, that's terrific for uh, long arm quilting. It's certainly not going to be a full-time income unless I was able to ramp that
Spend full
up.
time. Yeah, you'd have to spend full time doing it in order for it
Exactly,
to be a
yeah,
full-time
and
income. Yeah.
right, and a lot of folks, as you mentioned, I have a podcast, I have a YouTube channel, I have a website where I'm selling patterns. I teach at my local quilt shop. So you kind of build these different revenue streams, and that's how people get to that full full income, full-time income in a quilting business. So, and I'm sure there's dedicated quilters that are able to do it just off their long arm work. So I'm anxious to hear about those business models as well.
Yeah, and obviously everybody is not at the same place, and income is only one of
Oh,
the
yeah.
goals.
You have to build a business that you love, that fits your life. And I like that we interview a lot of different people. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember one lady, and she's been doing over 1,000 quilts every year for 20 years. And for her and for a lot of other people, that fits the definition of a successful long arm quilting business. In my mind, it feels like prison. That's a lot of quilts to be doing. And, can you even take a day? Now, of course, she's built it and she loves it, and it's perfect for her. But I think everybody's goals in life, your business has to fit your goals. So um, sometimes people feel like their business is less because it's smaller. Eh, I think I think the business that gives you the flexibility, the freedom, the the internal sense of fulfillment is a lot more important.
That's what it's all about, I
Mhm.
believe.
Mhm.
Yep. Do you offer any of those other services like binding a quilt, piecing a t-shirt quilt for somebody who doesn't know how to make a memory quilt, any of those things?
I have done some commission quilts start to finish. I have a good friend who, anytime someone in her social circle is having a baby, she calls me up and says, I'm ready for a baby quilt. And we choose the fabric together, and then I do it start to finish. Um, I typically do not um, offer binding services. I'm just, as I said, with a part-time job, with my, and wanting to sew a little bit myself, I try to just do the quilting phase and send those on their way. I've done a few t-shirt quilts, but there's other folks in my area that specialize in that, and I have never been a big fan of trying to quilt and work with those knit fabrics. So it's easy to pass on some of those jobs that don't align with your skill sets. So
So for the people that are watching, what would you say has been the hardest part of getting your business to the place that you want it to be?
I would say it is, marketing is always a challenge. Getting your name out there, getting that uh consistent level of business, whatever level you want that to be at. As I said, if I'm quilting 1 to 2 customer quilts a month, I'm happy at the moment. If I needed more, I'd have to work a little bit harder to contact folks and make sure they knew that I was here and available. Um, so yeah, you keep trying to find the things that work, and then if something worked, do more of that. Don't keep throwing spaghetti at the wall. Look back at your results, and then be intentional about the strategy and the decisions that you're making to move your business forward.
Mhm. Can you think, I mean, you've been doing this for 17 years, and a lot of things have changed in the world, technologically and whatever. Are there things that came along in the last 5 or 10 years, technology wise? Some people have mentioned social media, or, being able to snap a photo with your phone and text it to somebody. Or have there been particular things that stand out for you in technology that have made it easier for you now than when you first started?
I am loving these Zoom chats over the last 3 or 4 years. That has been a big change. Not not necessarily for my long arm business. I don't typically, you know, video chat with my customers, but it certainly is an option. Um, Sharing progress shots and even videos of the quilting process that, with my customers. I can do a quick video over a section and say, okay, this is the design I chose. Are you liking it? Before I spend time going over the whole quilt. And they seem to enjoy that. So yeah, using the technology and the social media that we have. I have not upgraded to the computerized machine, but that's definitely on my dream someday list. So we'll look forward to taking those technological leaps as soon as possible.
4 years ago, pretty much nobody had ever heard of Zoom, you know.
Well, when I was a kid, I remember watching Star Trek on TV and they had
Mhm.
there was no such thing. I mean, we're living in the future right now.
We're living in Star Trek now.
Yeah. So, this is my favorite question to ask, and I think I know who you're going to say, but I might be wrong. Who was your biggest cheerleader in your support system as you did this?
Um, Cheerleader in a very quiet, supportive sense, is definitely my husband. My daughter has been very patient. I got my long arm just 6 months before she was born, so she's definitely grown up around that. And her life may have been different if we didn't have the long arm in what could have been her playroom, but she's she's enjoyed it. And my mom definitely is the biggest inspiration and supportive person for this journey, since I always joke that it was her fault. She opened the quilt store that got me into this whole endeavor in the first place.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So, how much of a difference in control of your time and perhaps income um, has this quilting business had on your life?
I just think it's a wonderful blend of uh, the creativity and the freedom to pursue my hobbies, and then the money is definitely that extra frosting on the cake. And um the opportunities to travel and to meet so many different wonderful people in the quilt world. We have a full slate of shows across the country that we can travel to and visit, and beautiful retreat centers. And yeah, it's just fabulous.
And those trips are potentially tax deductible. Don't take tax advice from me, but there's quite often that something that you would have gone to under your own dime, you might be writing the checks from your business account because they're legitimate. So,
Definitely, yeah. Take a class, talk business with some other quilters at the show, and yes, you can put those
mhm,
in the business expense column.
exactly. Yeah. What is something that you wish someone would have told you when you were first getting started?
It's I have come to a much better relationship with Jack the Ripper these days. You try to avoid uh, those sessions, those dates. Um, and you can definitely, the tip there for the beginners is to check your tension early and often. I don't always follow my own advice, but uh, yeah, if you figure that mistakes are uh, just all part of the journey, and get on with the ripping and get back to sewing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Um, we got a question here that's addressed to both. I didn't read it actually yet because it's lengthy. I'll read it out loud here. I'm in the process. It's Diana who writes this. I'm in the process of business setup, and in discussing insurance, they said not to have customers come to your home. Are your studios in your home?
Yeah,
My
definitely.
my studio is in my home, and I have always abided by that advice. I just would prefer to meet customers at a local quilt shop, and luckily I have a good relationship with the shop owners. They don't mind me coming in. Usually I'm encouraging my customers to buy their batting and their backing and everything at that shop anyway. So hopefully it could be a beneficial relationship. But yeah, it just helps to have that barrier and meet customers in a public place.
Sure.
And I'm
I, I,
I'm
I
far up in the mountains, so it's easier for me to go into town and meet everybody in town. But
gotcha.
I have a few that come out. We have a nice tea. Life is good.
I would say that uh, any risk can probably have insurance applied to it. It's just that your agent was probably wanting to be careful to quote you something real affordable. And one of the biggest risks is that a customer slip on some ice, and then there's a big expensive lawsuit. And
Yep.
so that's probably great advice. But if you wanted to have customers come to your studio, because customers come to businesses all the time, but you're going to pay more for your insurance because you're going to have that $1 million umbrella against all liabilities or whatever. So that's a great question. Thank you, Diana.
Well, to wrap up Andy's section of this interview, it was what, 17 years ago that you first started, and somebody that's wants to start doing this today, 2024. What advice would you have? Do you think it's still something that can be done nowadays? Is it different than it was when you started?
I There seems to be a wider variety of long arm machines on the market and a little bit wider price range of those. So you can find the smaller, more affordable starter machines. If you wanted to start out just quilting for yourself and then upgrade and expand as you learn. But yes, I don't see the quilting industry shrinking anytime soon. It's the numbers just keep going up. Everybody's quilting more. I continue to see new people entering the quilt world. So yeah, I would definitely say jump in. The story goes the best time to have started a business was 10 years ago, but the second best is today. So go ahead and do it. And then as it worked out well for me, if it can work for someone else to find some friends in the industry and have that community aspect, that's always been beneficial to me. So I would encourage people to reach out to other long armors in your area and learn from them. There's a wealth of knowledge out there.
That brings up in my mind, it wasn't very long ago, a few days ago, we posted on the website on gamel.com the schedule for Quilting with Confidence tour for 2024. Now, when we first did Quilting with Confidence, it was in 2019. That was before the world fell apart and then we had to put it all back together. But in 2019, we went all around. We had, I think it was over 50 stops, including international. And then when we did Quilting with Confidence at home, we did that. And then last year, we did Quilting with Confidence with some 2 day and 4 day events. This year, we have learned so much. All of the Quilting with Confidence events, they've always been just an incredible, life-changing, I think it's fair to say life-changing
Yes.
experience when people go to them, and they're just a few $100s to attend. And so what we're doing this year is a 2 day event, and there's a free day, a free day. So that would be the third day, but it's the first day. And so lots and lots of these things are going to fill up really fast, but there's something like around 40 locations that are published right now. And I couldn't be more excited because the friendships that people build and the connections that they build there, they're worth 10 times what you pay to come.
Oh,
I
I
yeah,
mean,
would definitely agree.
absolutely, absolutely.
have either of you attended?
No, but I signed up this morning.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, I actually was at one of those early 2019 events, and even as an experienced long armor, it was a wonderful day. I continue to take classes. I continue to, learn new techniques, new designs, and it's so interesting to hear the stories from the instructors and the attendees. As you said, some of those connections are just they last forever, so that's wonderful.
Right. There are plenty of industries that if you want to spend a couple of days with other people in your industry, you can easily spend 5 grand, 10 grand just for the pleasure of getting a chance to be with those people. And the cool thing with Quilting with Confidence, most everybody who comes is going to be a Gamel owner. Some people are shopping and they just want to check it out. But even, if you have a friend that has one of these other brands and her brand doesn't offer this kind of training, um, for sure the free day, there's no risk there. You just come to the free day. But also, I wouldn't say probably the computerized is ideal for people who have a different brand of computerized machine, but the hand guided skills, they'll transfer right across. And computerized, the worry there is you'll sit through the classes and then have to buy a Statler at the end because you'll see everything you could do with it. But
I would agree that definitely
Okay.
put the bug in my head when I was at Quilting with Confidence and saw the combination of things you can do with Statler and hand guided.
yeah, the more creative bent a person has, the more you see what you could potentially do with that software. So it's incredible.
All right. Well, we need to move on. And we're going to talk to Beth now. Beth Lonnquist.
Yes, sir.
So let's start out by finding out where you're located.
Okay, so I'm up in Monument, Colorado, halfway between Denver and Colorado Springs.
And how long have you been doing this long arming thing?
So I've been quilting for 52 years.
52 years.
Yes, sir.
Not long arm
1972.
quilting.
And then long arm quilting. So did a lot of domestic. And my first domestic didn't have a darning foot at all. So it was and you couldn't lower the feed dogs. So it's
You
been
had to
quite a
straight stitch it.
progression. Huh?
You had to straight stitch it then.
Well, yeah, and then you punch a hole inside a piece of cardboard, tape that down over your feed dog so that your fabric. So that was a while ago. About 11 years ago, I got the long arm, and I have a little Gamel Vision 20. I call it my baby machine because I'm short and I couldn't put the wheels on it because that would make it too tall. And so I have that, and transferring over from this to this was like easy, piece of cake, not a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So what made you decide to get the long arm machine after you were so incredibly pleased with your piece of cardboard on the
well, I got other machines, so I was able to do it with drop your feed dogs and let her rip. So I knew a woman that was about 80, and she got her long arm, and she was so pleased with it, and started quilting some of her backlog of quilts, and I didn't want to wait that long. So circumstances happen, and this kind of goes into the next question. How did I fund it? I got in a car wreck, and so I couldn't do as much of the hand guiding on my domestic. So after a year of recuperation, I got the long arm. That was the way I funded it, and that's what I started to do. And again, that whole motion transfers out over pretty easily.
Right.
That's a pretty unique story.
So when you had the car accident, and obviously that was pretty devastating physically, did that make it so that you basically weren't able to do whatever other kind of job you used to do?
Oh, okay. So I was working in a quilt shop. I was always able to work in a quilt shop. And I worked in two, and the last one I worked for about 17 years.
Gotcha. Okay.
So people got to know me as far as the business end. I bought this to get my backlog done. I was a teacher at the shop, probably making 8 tops a month as a teacher. And and then and during the class and as for samples, but not always getting them all quilted. So
Right.
that bulked up my backlog of quilts to be quilted. And then and getting the long arm, it's a time thing. It gives you the freedom of time. What would take you 2.5 weeks to do on your domestic takes you 2.5 days to hand guide. Get the Statler, baby, we're cutting it down again. And you can, not only can you do the quilting, but you can also quilt and piece at the same time. So now you're doubling up your time, and it's wonderful. I'm getting through that backlog. And the backlog got up 150 quilts.
So do you strictly do hand guided, or do you have a Statler? Or
So last year, I had a friend that convinced me that I shouldn't wait until I'm 75 and I can no longer hand guide to get the Statler. So I got the Statler and absolutely love it. And it is worth every penny. And again, it's a time sink. So what took you 2-3 days to hand guide through a quilt, say you do the light parts, and then you do the blue parts, and then you got to do the borders. All of a sudden, bomb, 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 2 days and you're done, rather than a week, which was like 3 to 4 weeks with your domestic. So this is saving you time. This is making you more efficient. Oh, more efficient time. You can make more money as a business.
It seems like in everybody's life, there's never enough time to do everything that you want to do. I have people tell me sometimes, that they feel guilty that they don't have the time to spend with their grandkids or with their spouse or with their sister, because they have these quilts to do. And I'm like, well, we have some tools that can help with that to get them done
They do.
quicker.
They are totally successful there.
Yep. So when you first got your original little hand-guided gamel,
Yeah.
your baby, uh, you did some shopping. You had to decide between the different brands. How was the decision? How did you come down on Gamel as your choice?
So I worked in a shop, and they had one manufacturer. I don't know if you want me to mention manufacturers or not, but they had
It
one
doesn't matter.
manufacturer there. The lady that was 80, I went over and I went and actually quilted quilts on all these different machines. And there were some I didn't like how they felt. There were some I didn't like how they sounded. And oh, honey, the gamma was solid as all get out. So I knew that was a good place to go. And this
Mhm.
is before I talked to a bunch of other people. And it has a great reputation. It is a great machine. I think have had it for years. Nothing has gone wrong with it. Well, I had one little button that was $10. I had to fix that one. That was
Yeah,
it.
yeah. We engineered around that problem. We don't have people have buttons go bad anymore. Our new
I
one
know.
lasts
It's a
forever.
new button. It's great.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. That was pretty annoying to have people's, multi-thousand-dollar machines go bad for lack of a $10 button.
But again, and that's been and now it's 12 years.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
That's it.
Two of the adjectives that I often hear when people are looking at purchasing a gamble are, like you said, solid and industrial. In addition to all the abilities and artistic things of them, you can just tell that it's a strong machine.
It's a strong machine, but it moves light as a feather.
Mhm.
You know, and I quilt pretty fast. I can quilt when I was trying them out. I tried out the Gamel when they were running a Statler class. I finished a quilt in their 2-hour Statler class.
Mhm.
So it worked well,
So,
obviously.
so when you got your first one, you had enough quilts. I mean, you were mentioning 8 shop samples and other quilts per month,
Yeah.
which obviously, if you're paying somebody to do that, that I mean, the math works out perfectly. You ought to have your own machine. Even at 3 quilts a month, you should have your own machine. But
Absolutely.
how did you know there was enough business available to support another long arm quilter, or was that not even a concern because it just made financial sense to have your own machine?
Well, it made financial sense to have my even if you're all so I even now I'm not teaching anymore. I still make about 30 quilts a year. 30 quilts a year gives you, you know, at 200, let's see, I did the math, 200 at $6,000 a year that I would be spending if I was going to have somebody quilt for me.
Right.
So
And you
at
would give
that,
up the
in 5
control.
years. Hmm?
Yeah, and you would give up the control of how it looks, and you
Oh,
would give up control over the timeline of when it gets finished. Now, if it's not done, we know whose fault it is.
yeah. So it's $6,000 a year, pretty much. And this is pretty typical with the entire long arm group that I also belong to. And it's a local group and we just share ideas. Um, but in about 5 years, everybody is pretty much able to pay off their machine.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you
Well,
think about that,
we don't
that's
repo
nice.
them. We finance
Yeah,
them, but we don't have to come pick them up because they pay for themselves.
they pay for themselves. And 5 years is not that long a time for
Mhm.
somebody to even doing it casually, to pay off a machine.
And so are you exclusively do quilting these days?
Yeah, I had the best time. It's fun.
So,
And I do both long arm and Statler. I mean, I do hand guided and Statler at this, and some quilts require um hand guided, and most quilts Statler works just great, and the combination just gets it finished to a point that I like it. And I do quilt for customers also.
I thought it sounded like you did. How did you come up with the funds to buy your machines? I mean, the first machine, that probably has a story, and then the second machine, how did you come up with the money? People wonder.
So the Statlers put on my baby machine. So I
Okay,
still have the same machine.
same machine.
Um, and again, it just makes financial sense. And obviously, if I've been quilting for 11 years with other customers, those funds helped fund the Statler, and so that's the way it goes. I can pay for it, no problem.
And now that you have both hand guided and Statler, what would you say is the ratio of you know computer hand?
Statler, baby. Statler's probably about well, with my backlog, Statler is probably
Baby.
75% of the quilts, and then the 25% that really need to be custom quilted really need to be custom quilted. And the backlog of about 150 quilts, and this has just been in the last year and 2 months. I'm down to about 45, plus all the customer stuff.
You went from a backlog of
100,
150?
150 quilt tops.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm making about 30 a year.
You
My
sound
I'm
like you're
part of that.
becoming a bit more productive these days.
I am. It's great.
So about how many hours a week do you spend quilting these days? Is it full time?
Full time. Oh, probably 25, 30, 35. Not
Okay.
full time. And I can go anytime. I can take a break anytime I want. I can visit anybody I want. So it's lovely.
Yep.
And and it helps me get through that little stash that everybody kind of um collects over the time.
Gotcha.
And I
And
have
what?
52 years worth of collection.
Yes, yes. There's not many people that can say that. So, these days, what is the about a ballpark average of a queen size quilt, would you say?
So, ballpark average is around 250, and that includes the thread, but does not include the batting.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
Um, so uh, do you offer other services like binding or piecing t-shirt quilts, things like that?
So, I also run a couple of or a help group so that I don't have to do the work, but I can show somebody how to do the work. Yay. And we meet, it's a free session, so it's like a free class for anybody. And with all the experience I have, I can pretty much cover any issue anybody might have. So t-shirt quilts and stuff are very labor intensive. I don't do them. I have, and I have taught the class. So there's a few things that'll get you through there a little faster.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
Um,
So you've been in the quilting business for half a century.
Yeah.
Um, what for the people that are either new in the quilting business or thinking about getting into it, um, what would you say is the hardest part of growing a quilting business?
Oh, I would say obviously marketing. Um, you know, there is just getting your name out there, going to shows, going to quilt guilds, word of mouth is wonderful. And I'm in an area, a monument between pretty much draw from Colorado Springs and not Denver. So it's not as large, and there's probably about 50 quilters. So there's a lot of competition. I don't care about that, but people come to me because they know me, and they don't get to choose what they get quilted, and they don't get to see what's quilted. They hand me a top, I say, okay, and then we take it from there.
So, as far as getting your name out there and advertising, um, do you do any advertising? Is it all word of mouth?
All word of, well, because I'm not interested in growing my business at this point in my stage of my life, um, I don't have to worry about that. But when it was, you have to be in the quilt shops, you have to be at the quilt guilds, you have to be advertising, you have to have your website, you have to have all that stuff rolling. And then you can be very, very successful. I know of people that have put their kids through private schools, paid for colleges, paid for homes, just with their quilting business.
and just to chime in on that a little bit, the world has changed. Yes, it's changed a lot, but the don't underestimate the power of the little business card pinned up on the cork board at the quilt shop, because
Absolutely.
people are looking for somebody who will quilt their quilt. And
Absolutely.
you know, I remember when I started my first business so very long ago, I spent $80 to have 500 business cards printed up, which these days would be that's a joke. But it was offset printing press. Uh, but those. people need to know, who can I call to get this done? You
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
And I was, Andy, if I could, while we're on that subject of advertising versus and word of mouth, you got any other thing to contribute with that for the people that are watching?
Just take advantage of all the avenues. As you know, as Beth says, you want to be in the quilt shops, you want to talk to people wherever you can. And you know, a lot of people are having success on whatever the latest and greatest social media platform is. You know, there's quilters on TikTok. You know, you think of that as for the kids, but you know, people like to see things happen, and watching a machine stitch out a quilt is mesmerizing. We all stand there and love to watch the Statler at work, or the hand guided quilter draw something on fabric. So yeah, take advantage of whatever platforms or avenues that you can to get your name out there.
Well, I'm going to try to ask Beth this question, but I'm going to say, I don't know. She's going to just reply the Statler. So, what's one change in technology that makes it easier today than when you started? But we already know you're going to say the Statler. Is there anything else that you can think of that has made it easier for you than when you?
Well, okay. Follow the Statler with the computer. You know, you can design on the computer. You can design for the Statler on the computer,
Oh, that's
which
true. You can create your own patterns. Yeah.
which even having it for just a year, I'm starting to create my own patterns before I got to the Quilting of Confidence tour. So that's what I'm going for, is the advanced digitizing for that, because
Yeah.
and digitizing for long arm is not far off of digitizing for embroidery, I'm finding out. You know, there is still that process is the same of getting point A to point B with the machine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're doing solid stitches or if you're doing Statler stitches, quilting stitches.
Well, having done both, and I started with machine embroidery when it first hit the home market, and digitizing, it's 1,000 times easier to digitize for the long arm, because you don't have to worry about push-pull compensation, underlay stitching, overlap, any of that stuff. I mean, there's still
Oh,
shrinkage, but
yeah.
yeah, it's unbelievably easier.
Yeah. Although I can get my quilts to shrink, I have gotten a couple of them to shrink about 2 inches with just tight quilting.
Oh, you can do it. Yeah.
You can do it,
Well,
but
all quilts will shrink. Yeah.
yeah, and all, you know, everything keeps getting easier and easier. And then I think it also opens up new opportunities. So you quilt one way when you're quilting on a domestic, you quilt another way when you can actually see it on just a sit alone with the larger opening, and on, well, the little frames that they have that you can roll your quilt and pretend that your quilt is on rolls. You quilt differently when you're hand guiding, when it's on a long arm. You quilt differently when you're quilting with a computer. You know, so there's all these tools, all these things open up all these opportunities for creativity.
Sounds like the technology has opened up, has expanded Beth's artistic side.
Absolutely.
Beth, I want to ask you, who would you say has been your biggest cheerleader through all this?
Well, my mom, she passed away in 2020. But and then my friends, my friend convinced me that you should not wait until you're 75 to get a Statler. And so learning now, and again, that's freeing up so much more time. So it's great.
That's awesome. What kind of impact has the quilting money and the control of your personal schedule made in your life?
I can go anywhere, do anything I want. And I can play like nobody's business. So yeah, it has opened up all of that with not a ton of impact on time. I mean, it's an expensive outlay. But it comes back so fast, I
Mhm,
think.
mhm.
And it comes back in time, and it comes back in friendships, and it comes back in the people that you meet. Um, and it just enhances your life so much. And the people that you help. Some of the quilts you're making for somebody who has passed, and somebody's taken their shirts and turned them all into a Baltimore album quilt. Thank you very much. That was so much fun to quilt. But those memory quilts that just help so many people. And I think it gets all down to people, whether it's your family or other families or the larger quilting community.
One thing one thing I've seen with both of these ladies that we're talking to is the the reward that they have gained from this path that they've gone on.
Oh,
In addition, aside from just the finance part of it.
yeah,
Well, you can have a job, but the job will get old, the job will get repetitive, the job will get boring unless there's passion and purpose behind it. And when Beth was talking about the people side, that's what fires me up every morning too. A,
absolutely.
a big part of my history is being in quilters' studios, being in their homes, uh, both delivering and showing them how to use their new machine, as well as doing the preventative maintenance and stuff. And when you hear the life-changing aspects, what has happened in their life because of this journey that they're on, it's like, well, you know, I can't imagine anything better for people to do. And there I go on a monologue again. So, what is something that you wish someone would have told you when you first started?
Oh, everything is go. Be fearless. Start now. Don't wait. Um,
Now, you look
there's
fearless already. Were you always fearless, or has this developed?
a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Somewhat fearless, but pretty quiet. When people first meet me, I'm pretty quiet. Um, but I think that the quilting community is so welcoming, and the quilting community is so helpful. It to go up to anybody, and they talk about people being 7 steps apart or 5 steps apart. You go up to a quilter, they're like 2 steps, 1 step. They're right there, and I don't care if, I mean, I've had classes from Libby Lehman, I've had classes from Alex Anderson, I've had classes from Yvonne Purcella, all these people, and I could turn around, well, not those people, but other people that are still alive, and call them tomorrow, and they would be right there for me, and
Yeah,
and they would give me an answer, and I think that's fabulous.
there's a
And
ton of generous and kind people.
absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely.
So Beth, somebody that would like to accomplish what you have been talking about here, what what advice would you give them for this day and age?
What advice? Start small. Don't worry about it, and know that. Well, and start with charity quilts. Hello. My first quilts, honey, you don't want to see them. And they went away to charity.
Well, they were hand guided too.
They were hand guided on this machine. So start small, do some charities, get some things under your belt. And once you get rolling, it's, take those classes, get out there, the Quilting for Confidence tour. So looking forward to that. Um, I had the 1 hour education with the Gamma educator. All my questions got answered immediately. And it was like, there's this, and there's this, and this. and it was like, okay, and I could pick it up that fast. So I am,
You did one of those 1 hour Zoom sessions?
yep.
Yeah.
And it
It's
was,
ama it's amazing how many people I've talked to who are reluctant to plunk down the, I don't know, $59 or whatever. And
yeah,
it blows my mind because it's like, well, wait a minute. When do you get an hour of a professional's time for $59? And what they're able to do for you is extraordinary.
absolutely.
Hmm.
And again, it's that sharing. It's that, these are the things I know are out there. I don't know how hard I was working before. And some of the things where that's just how hard it is, as far as the digitizing end of things. But there's again, there's videos out there. You guys have done a fabulous job of that kind of education. Your technical people, call them. We were on a first name basis for a little bit when I got my little Statler put on, because it took my little baby and turned her into a little bit of a diva for a while, but we got that under control.
And I think a lot of the people in the generations that do quilting have maybe never had a like a one-on-one Zoom with somebody, and they feel like it's something foreign to them. But do you, what is your feeling about that, Beth? Would you encourage somebody to take advantage of that?
Absolutely. I was really reluctant, tell you the truth, and I had to make sure that I had it on mine, and I was thinking it was going to be totally different than what it was. You don't need your own computer. It's just a matter of following and taking notes, as if I was in a large class. And the only difference is I didn't go out on my lunch break and redo everything all over again. So make sure I had it. Um, I like right after the hour, but and applied everything immediately, you know. And again, I had already started some digitizing prior to going, so it was great. Um, and the instructor was fabulous. And I let you guys pick them. I just said, this is my parameters. This is what I want to learn. So if you want to learn ruler work, if you want to learn some of the hand guide stuff, again, they know who they are. They know what to teach. So that's what I figured. Or you guys know who you are and
Yep.
what you can teach best. And so that worked out really well for me.
Cool. Well, look, Beth did a commercial for us.
She sure did.
Pretty awesome.
Thank you, Beth.
Sorry.
Well, that wraps up the questions that we have. I am very grateful to you two for joining us and for sharing your experience. Our goal obviously is that people would perhaps, by hearing your story and hearing what you've gone through, they might be able to see that this is either something they want to do, or who knows, maybe they decide after listening to our episode that they never want to be a long arm quilter. Good. Go do
Yeah.
what makes you happy.
Give them some direction one way or the other.
That's right. That's right.
No, I think it's just been it's been a wonderful journey. Again, I've been doing this for, quite a while. I cannot name a single person that I am not glad I met through quilting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I mean,
fantastic.
Well,
it's a great community. The community is nationwide. I mean, and it's fabulous. It doesn't matter where you go. You just have to have a quilted bag with you.
before we go, can each of you tell where people can find you or get in touch with you online or whatever? Andi?
Sure. I am True Blue Quilts all over the place. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, my website, truebluequilts.com.
And what about you, Beth?
And I am redlonn @gmail.com.
Easy.
So easy.
Blue and red.
Email me, and people email me all the time from all over the world.
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
thank you both so much for joining
Yeah.
us and sharing your experience with people. And if you haven't already, there's a whole bunch of these other episodes that you can go back and listen to on your favorite podcatcher or you can watch them on YouTube, except for the one episode that Bobby lost.
Don't let me forget that.
But they're all there other than that.
So,
Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
it's been great.
bye, guys.